Good morning, grade 7s. Welcome to lesson 11, part 2. In this lesson, we will be continuing with 2D shapes and we'll be talking about the area of polygons. This is page 117 in your textbook. So in the previous lesson, we spoke about perimeter. That was the distance around the outside of a shape. Now the area is the amount of space that a 2D shape takes up. So in other words, the area inside a 2D shape. And this is measured in millimeters squared, centimeters squared, meters squared, or kilometers squared, depending on the units we're using. Now in this table, I've given you the formulas that you need to know for area. Please, you need to learn these out of your head. So to work out the area of a square, remember squares have 4 equal sides. The formula is area equals length times length, or L times L. Okay, now another way of writing that, length squared basically means length times length, so I just wrote it using an exponent. Either sum is correct, you may use any one of them. Then area of a rectangle is length times breadth, because they're not the same, okay, so it's L times B. And then area of a triangle is half times your base times your height. So base, I just used the letter B, height, I used the letter H. So let's go through a few examples. So example 1 says calculate the area of the following. So the first one is a square. We can see it's a square because they've told us each side of the square is equal. And they've told us each side is 4 meters. Now when you're working out the area of a shape, the first step, you write the formula out like that for me using symbols. You don't put the numbers in yet. The second step, you insert or you substitute in whatever measurements are given. So they tell you the length is 4 meters. So we say 4 meters times the length again is 4 meters. 4 times 4 is 16, and because it's area, we are measuring in meters squared. Then example 1b is a rectangle. The length of the shape is 7 centimeters. The breadth is 2 centimeters. Again, make sure your measurements are always in the same units. So the formula of a rectangle is given as area equals length times breadth. My length, I said, was 7 centimeters times my breadth is 2 centimeters. 7 times 2 is 14 centimeters squared. Don't forget about the square. Then our last one, the triangle. So here the triangle, the base of the triangle, or the bottom line of the triangle is 12 centimeters. And the height I've shown you is 5 centimeters. So my area formula is half times base times height. So then that's equal to half times my base is 12 times my height is 5. Now with this one, there's 2 ways of working it out, or there's a few ways actually. So what we can either do, we can first work out what 12 times 5 is. Okay, and if you know your times tables, 12 times 5 we know is 60. Alright, now half times 12 basically means that we need to work out what half of 12 is. And half of 60, sorry, half of 60. And half of 60 we know is 30. And because we're working in centimeters and area, it is centimeters squared. So all you're doing with these formulas is you're substituting in the values and then you're working it out. There's nothing complicated. Right, then it says at the bottom, sometimes we can be given composite shapes and be asked to work out the area. Now, if you think back to grade 5, a composite shape is when we've got 2D shapes that are stuck together to form one shape. So for example, you could have, let's say, a triangle that's connected to a square. So that would be a composite shape. So it's when 2 2D shapes, or 3 or 4, however many, stick together to form one larger composite shape. So it says when given composite shapes, divide them into smaller shapes. That's areas are easier to work out. And then add all the little areas together to get the total area. So if we looked at this shape, I said we have a square over there and we have a triangle. So to work out the area of this full shape, I don't know what the formula of this shape is because it's an irregular shape. So what I would do, I've divided it into a square. I know the formula for a square. So I would work out that area first. I know the area for a triangle. There's my formula. I would work that out second, and then I would add them together to get the total area. Alright, so if we look at example D, there's an example of a composite shape. It's the same shape I've just given you. It's a square and a triangle that have been squashed together. Now, whenever you get a question like this, obviously I'm not going to separate it into shapes for you. You'll need to do it yourself. So there's my square, there's my triangle, so I'm going to divide it down over there. Okay, so we divided it into a square and a triangle. So let's work out the length of the area of the square. We know it's 4 times 4, which is equal to 16 centimeters squared. That's for this area over there. Now my triangle, be very careful with your measurements. This 7 centimeter is for the full base of the shape. However, we know that just that area over there is 4. So from there to there, we know is 4 centimeters. So if the total is 7 and that little bit is 4, then that section must be 7 minus 4, which is 3 centimeters. So my base of my triangle is 3 centimeters, right? Then if I go straight up, my height, obviously because it's a square, will be the same on both sides. So that's 4 centimeters. So when I work out the area of my triangle, area equals half times base times height. Half of, okay, my base, it doesn't matter which way you go. So 4 centimeters times my height is 3. Again, I can work out 4 times 3, that's equal to 12. And half of 12 is equal to 6 centimeters squared. I've got my two areas, add them together, and I get my final answer, my total area, which is 22 centimeters squared. So just a reminder, any composite shapes, you're going to divide them into smaller shapes, work out those areas, and then add them together. Okay, now it says, sometimes they can ask us to find the area of the shaded part. We always use the same method to calculate the shaded area. We always calculate the biggest shape's area first and then subtract the shaded areas. Okay, now that depends on the question, so it sounds a bit familiar, a bit strange at first, but once you get used to the idea, it becomes much easier. So if we look at this example, you can see there's a big rectangle. Inside the rectangle, there's a kite, and that has been shaded in. So the question would have said, work out the area of the shaded part. Now again, this is not really a regular shape. We don't have a formula for this area. So we need to figure out another way of doing this. Now with these type of questions, the first thing you're going to do, you're going to work out the area of the biggest shape. So in this case, my biggest shape is the rectangle. So we're going to work out the area of the rectangle. Okay, now we haven't been given measurements, we've just been given units. So we're not working in meters or centimeters, we're just working with units. So that little part there is 2 and that part there is 5. So all together, that length is 7. Then over here, that part is 8. This part is 2. All together, that's equal to 10. Then at the bottom, 1 and 6 together is 7. And on this side, 4 and 6 together is 10. Okay, so we've got the lengths of the sides of the rectangle. So let's work out the area. So area equals length times breadth. Remember, your formula always comes first. Then we substitute in the numbers. Over here I did it separately, but it's fine to do it together like we just did. So it's 7 times 10, length times breadth, which is equal to 70 units. So this full shape is equal to 70 units squared. Okay. Now what we need to do, we need to work out the shaded area. Now in order to do that, if we see these unshaded parts, they are all perfect triangles, and we know how to work out the area of a triangle. So if we worked out the area of each triangle and we subtracted it from this full shape, that shaded area would be left, and that's exactly what we're looking for. So that's how we're going to go about this question. So let's work out triangle A. You can see I've labeled it for you. I won't always label it. So in the test, you'll have to label your own shapes. Okay, so there's triangle A. Let me color it in completely for you. All right, now the formula of a triangle, half times base times height. My base of my shape is 2, my height is 4. So 4 times 2 is 8. And half of 8 is equal to 4 units squared. So my first triangle is 4 units squared. Now I'm going to quickly do the same for all of them. Triangle B, let's highlight triangle B. Okay, so there I've got triangle B. Now triangle B, we work out the same way, half times base times height. My base is 5, my height is 8. So 5 times 8 we know is 40. Half of 40 is then 20 units squared. Then triangle C, I'm going to shade in this color again. Okay, so there's triangle C. So half times base times height. Half times 2 times 6, so 2 times 6 is 12. Then half of 12 is 6. And then my last triangle, triangle D. Same thing, half times base times height, which is half times 1 times 6. 6 times 1 is 6, half of 6 is 3. So I've got each area of the smaller triangles. Now I said we're going to take my full area and we're going to subtract each triangle, and that will give us the shaded area. So that's what I did here at the bottom. The total was 70 minus 4 minus 20 minus 6 minus 3 gives us 37 units squared. So 37 units is the area of the shaded parts. Now whenever you get a question like this is how you're going to work it out. It's a very long method, but it's quite an easy method. So you first work out the biggest shape, then you subtract the smaller parts in between. Alright guys, go practice a few of these exercises. You'll see this is the last video lesson for the week. Tomorrow and Thursday you're just working on activities. There won't be any more knowledge tests. The knowledge tests are finished for now for the term 2 work. If anything changes, I will make an announcement on Seesaw, but for now, please just work on your activities in your textbooks.